he has done nothing but just opened up his heart, his family, his friends, to me, my wife, and my kids. And I believe everything he believes in. I think his values, his beliefs, everything is awesome. And I just want to kind of hold this for him and let you guys kind of also know him. I think everybody knows him, hopefully. But Arun's a great guy, and I think he would bring a lot of change and positive to Dublin. Okay, Arun?
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? It's a little tinny, or is it okay? I'm also very anal on sound system, so I'm going to try to get this right.
DJ.
Yeah, I was a DJ, right? So that's my highlight. There you go. No, I wanted to first of all make sure that this is very casual, and what you guys will find, I'm not your typical candidate. Everything about me, if you follow me on whether it be Facebook, on my campaign page, whether you follow any of my blogs, and there's a lot of blogs I'm on. One thing you will know about me is I put my heart in the right place. And if I invoke on something, it means 100% or more, including making my computer go off. And so I do have something a little scripted to say, but I do want to also make sure that I know a lot of you attending today may have questions, and I encourage the questions, okay? Fear is not one of the things I'm aware of. I will go head on with any of the topics that you want to say. So first of all, I know for a lot of you, you may or may not know some of the things about me, and I want to kind of cover that. And there's a lot, okay? I have a complex background. So I'm going to start off with a little bit about my education, talk a little bit about some of the highlights and experiences that I have, and how I think we can twist that to bringing a benefit to Dublin. So first of all, in Dublin itself, I've been on the Planning Commission for over 3 years. I've been on the Planning Department within Alameda County. So one thing you'll find about me is I'm born and brought up right here in Hayward, California, which is Alameda County. The furthest south I've ever lived is Union City, which is Alameda County. And the furthest east I've ever lived is Dublin, which is Alameda County. Okay? So my heart has been here since the day I landed when I was born. My mom is in the audience, my wife, my kids, my mother-in-law, my wife's grandmother, and they're always here to support me in anything and everything I do, and it takes a tight network. So when I was looking at a career coming out of high school, my dad was a civil engineer. And he talked about the foundation of what it takes in someone's career to do and what it means as far as being a professional. And so I chose actually to go to the same school my dad got his master's in, which was San Jose State University. And I got my bachelor's degree in civil engineering in hydrology, hydraulics, and transportation. And then I went to do my master's again at San Jose State. And I did that in hydrology, hydraulics, transportation, and construction management. And through there, I led into my beginning of my career working around the nation, implementing capital infrastructure worth over $360 billion. And that was in 2000 timeframe dollars, so it's a lot more today. So if you kind of think about $360 billion worth of infrastructure, what that meant. It meant a lot of highway. It meant a lot of rail, high-speed rail, mass transit, airports, jails, and hospitals. Okay, and I learned the value of what it takes for funding and how to manipulate funding and navigate to its benefits. I also learned the fact of accountability and transparency. From there, I went to Alameda County And then I went onwards to Alameda County Transportation Improvement Authority, which then got renamed through a merger at the government level, okay, to the Alameda County Transportation Commission. And from there, I learned the value of working with elected officials. I reported directly into 23 elected officials within Alameda County, understanding the mechanisms of how to make a change and how to deploy that. I even helped a major tax measure pass for the transportation sales tax in Alameda County. And the key things that you will know in some of my statements that I may make out there in blogs, it's not that I'm against stuff. If it doesn't match some of the critical things for transparency and accountability, I will oppose it, okay? And it's about being professional and matching up with that integrity to make sure that the community and the citizens get exactly what they pay for. So, I can tell you one thing that I have an in-depth understanding on is the environmental process and public outreach. We've also done major negotiations for capital infrastructure, land acquisitions, including labor negotiations. I used to be a union member, I used to be a union officer, and then I've also represented on the management side the different labor negotiations. And the reason why I bring this out is it's important to understand the complete environment that you operate in. You know, there may be people that are for or against unions. I get it, okay? But there's a lot of value that comes with that, and that's what sits the middle income people. Okay, that's what creates the beyond the 1%. And it's important to understand that. In addition, one of my major things that I do in all of my career is budget control and fiscal responsibility. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. This speech is ad hoc. And what I mean ad hoc is you're going to hear some comments from me today, which may or may not be an awakening. And it's going to get down to the roots of how I actually feel if I were elected in November, the change that I'm going to invoke upon and make a difference for. So you're not going to hear lip service from me, okay? Just because you want to hear yes, you're not going to hear that. If I'm going to say something, I'm going to give you the depth and the breadth of how I'm going to accomplish that. I've been part of developing sustainable programs and practical, critical decision-making skills. Many of you guys may know critical programs that have become known throughout the nation, for instance, the Safe Routes to School program. You may have even heard about the bike mobile. So it starts to connect in with my philosophy on a 360 approach to infrastructure and its transportation needs, looking at the environment and how we can best serve our community for a healthier living. So let's talk a little bit about my participation in different government levels and what I've done and how I have the ability to identify deficiencies. So you're going to hear some right now. At the city, I believe there's a significant deficiency in the way the city council and its commissions operate as an integral part, which is a major issue for you if you live here in the community of Dublin and understand it. These commissions are created to be an integral part of the decision making, and they're supposed to be respected. That is missing here at Dublin. And I think that that's something that needs to happen. I get it that the city council is elected and they have a fiduciary responsibility. But they also have a fiduciary responsibility to follow the recommendations that they invoke to be below them. And that is a philosophy that needs to change. Another thing that I'm very, very passionate about, and I'm actually held accountable because I'm a planning commissioner, is the fact that they lack a strategic vision and they have a general plan that they are still following, which is almost 2 decades old, if not older. The last time I checked, if you were in business and you had a strategic vision, you would revisit it the moment something changes. And I'll tell you what, the founders of the city of Dublin made a good move. We exist here today. I'm not saying close the boundaries, close the doors, don't do anything of that nature. What I'm saying, though, is that we need to revisit this document because the fundamentals have changed. The growth factors have changed. The demographics have changed. Everything's changed. How can we live behind a document that's outdated? So one thing I can tell you, in short, is that I'm committed to making a change for a difference. And this is not just words. I've given you my background. I've told you my experience. And I tell you one thing, I do not know how to fail on delivery. So think of it as this, as I'm going to introduce you my new statement for my campaign. Goel delivers on the goals, okay? It's the community goals, it's the community vision. It's making Dublin a better place, making it so that my kids, their friends, my external friends, all of us here in Dublin learn to enjoy and never want to leave Dublin. You know, we talked in my kickoff statement about delivering on a sound vision for the city. I'll tell you this, they came up with this new logic called New American Backyard. Last time I checked, the last time I walked out of my backyard, it was not very new, to the point where I almost hit the fence, okay? So that means we have to have all the amenities. It means we have to have pedestrian-friendly areas, we have to have congregation points, we need to have retail that makes a difference. The retail in a normal city would be the majority of revenue stream for its infrastructure, and it's contained to maintain its needs. It's missing here in Dublin. The major revenue stream in Dublin is coming from your housing sales tax, or your housing tax dollars. It's backwards. It's a model that's not sustainable. And I can guarantee you, somewhere during this campaign, the city council will be forced, or will make a decision shortly thereafter, to want to pursue with a sales tax. Because they've been staring right in the eye of a deficit that's headed at 2020, 2021. We do not have the talent currently, in my opinion, as bold as it may be, to circumvent a deficit if we continue to make these choices that we do. You know, some of the critical topics as I go out and I meet in the community, we're faced about, and remember, transportation is my fundamental background, is we talk about traffic congestion. So, to kind of expose a little bit about the realities of Dublin and its lack of vision, I'm going to say this. I went to them 4 or 5 years ago and saying, hey, you need to revisit the decisions we're making relative to building the infrastructure, setback requirements. So currently, if you drive on Dublin Boulevard, it's our major corridor, we're building right to the edge of it, which means we have no fundamental choice moving in the future. So if you see it getting gridlocked today, what's it going to do? It's going to get worse. 2035, 2040, Dublin Boulevard moves to a level of service F. If you ask the kids today, what does F mean? It means fail, okay? Which means our fiduciary responsibility is to make a change. So we're building brand new infrastructure that's designed to fail when we already know it. Are we making sound decisions? And I think one of the things that many elected officials today are, they're confused, or they simply don't know. And they don't know how to challenge the status, or they're in it for their own ambition. I'm going to tell you one thing. My wife has told me very specifically, you are not going to be on city council. Okay? And so you're hearing it very clear. My ambition is right here in the city, nowhere else. So I'm not conflicted. Safety. We're looking at crime rates in Dublin going up. We're looking at not having sufficient resources. Can you think about a major instance that was to happen across Dublin during commute hours? when you yourself are trying to go from one side to the other and it takes 30 minutes, the freeway's congested. Sounds to me like failure's in our face. Okay? Which means we have to have more resources deployed throughout the city, which means we need more funding. I get it. But if we're gonna come up with a sound plan for our future, let's make the correct investments and let's make sure we keep the City of Dublin's residents safe and sound. I do not want to see a city having a major catastrophe and we're not being able to respond. Another key element of my platform is transparency. And I talked to you about how my experience of transparency exists. Contracting policies. It's not a rocket science. The City of Dublin has contracts that have been in place for over 20 years. It's a fundamental flaw. It removes competition, and it does not ensure best value for best talent. I've led programs throughout the county building up these very things that says we got to go every 5 years, even if it costs a little bit of money to do the procurement, to ensure we have the best talent, best resources, and best price. It's our fiduciary responsibility. It's missing in Dublin. And I said this 2 years ago at City Council, and I stared them straight in the eye. They still have not done anything. They're talking about it. Doesn't take a long time. Beyond that, what I want to do is actually open it up. I told you this is ad hoc. And I want to make sure that I address questions from everybody because I can tell you one thing. My campaign is going to be atypical, which means if you think I have something that other campaigns do, I can guarantee you I do not. Topic number 1 that was asked as I was circulating today. Who's your campaign manager? Here's the answer. I have none, I don't want one, and we will succeed without it. Why? My fiduciary responsibility for a city council position that does not have sufficient finances behind it, is not considered a full-time position, does not require the investments beyond what you will make in that position. It's a bad business decision. That means we're going to do something that's completely grassroots. And because I'm being videoed today, I'm not going to disclose the mechanism of the grassroots approach that we're going to invoke upon. But I can tell you one thing, that every single dollar that comes in to support my campaign will be used effectively, efficiently, and it will be streamlined. I can also tell you, if there's excess funds remaining in my campaign, I'm going to do something that no other elected officials has ever done. I'm going to turn it around and try to put it back to its charity for all the causes that I'm professionally tied to. Because I believe that's where the money should go. I'm not going to be your standard politician. I can guarantee you that. So first of all, I'd like to see if there's any questions that anybody has, and I'm more than willing to address it. Yes, sir.
Mr. Arun, what's the thought down the road, because I've only lived here for a shorter time, in terms of dog parks? Are there dog parks already in Dublin?
There are dog parks in Dublin. The west side has one, the east side does have one, and I know some of the new developments are looking at bringing those in.
The reason I ask that, because I live in an apartment complex, and you know, you can put signs, please do not take your dog on the grass strip. Most of the time, people don't abide by that.
Sure.
So it'd be good to have something more available. Maybe not as many, but at least they know that they can take their dog on Saturday or Sunday and run and have a good time.
So what you're actually bringing up is something deeper. And what you're going to find out is I will always hear a problem and I'll look for a solution, but a solution that's sustainable. And what you're actually getting to is there's not enough outreach and communication going on for the right reasons. People don't know how to find the right resources. So we do have amenities, we do have the infrastructure. The question is it sufficient? And is the current infrastructure being utilized to its capacity? So that's something that we'll have to work on. And I think that that's very easy to be accomplished. Any other questions? I know there's got to be a tough one. Go for it.
I really like what you said in terms of many things, but one in particular has to do with revisiting the housing element.
Yeah.
And we know we've had for 20 years, we know it doesn't work anymore, and the council's making decisions based on an old, outdated plan that doesn't work. There's a number of us that are always concerned about the continued approval of housing and investing in housing in Dublin. And second that, I asked about that, but also we're concerned that we're losing our downtown.
Yep.
And the downtown, as you know, there are almost 400 units now going in on Dublin Boulevard. It's right on the sidewalk, as you mentioned. There are another 70 units, almost 66 in True Market going on in regional. And slowly, the downtown is slipping away. So rather than revitalizing the downtown, having a pedestrian friendly, having a place the community can come together, it's slipping away. And as you said, there is no vision on the part of this council to even consider that we could have a viable downtown. What do you see, Arun, that could be done in terms of saving and revitalizing the downtown?
So I'm actually going to talk about something unique here. Is we could focus some of our funding that we use here at the city to support one very own developer and retransition that back to that downtown area and encourage the landowners to actually redevelop a very large area, but redevelop it for basically a unified retail zone. Okay? To kind of give you the magnitudes of what they call sewer connections, it's a very substantial portion. I do not have the exact number, but I can say this is well above $10 million that have gone to this sewer connection program. And I can also say it's gone to one predominant landowner. So it sounds like to me there's a conflict as far as how we are doing things in our community to actually ensure we're making the right choices. One of your key concerns are, and I was challenged with the TrueMark property, and I ended up approving it. I'll be honest with you, it was 70 units. I did not like the project. But because of the way of the guidelines of the Planning Commission and how it operates, we're boxed from our decision-making process to make sure that we can find the findings. But the findings are very scripted. It's aesthetics, it's land use, it's policies and procedures associated with that. One of them is not setback. One of them is not conditions on the developer as far as how far out they can build. That comes from your engineering department and your city manager. So those are some of the key things that have to be revisited. And I think the other thing is we've got to be willing to leave land vacant and unoccupied until we get the right solutions in place. So you have a major retailer that just vacated out of that area. That's about a 50,000 square foot footprint. There's other parts of that puzzle that are in there that are unoccupied. And the argument that's being used here in the Tri-Valley is that we have a significant abundance of retail space. Therefore, it's not a viable use. Developers today, they're in business, okay? Let's be honest with ourselves. Their decision-making processes are based on best revenue streams for themselves. But one of the key things that you need to really understand behind that is the only way they can convert their revenue stream is if we allow them to change their land use. And we gotta be not so hungry. Not so hungry to make quick fundamental decisions if it doesn't match with our vision. It all comes back to that vision. You talked about the project that's bringing 400 homes. It's Camp Parks. I recently was also an approver of that project. The project has federal funds behind it. It's a federal land. That landowner can sell it. The city established its own guidelines and a master plan associated with that. And that was approved 2.5+ years ago. So the portion that came back was basically looking at the aesthetics of the development only, looking at the constraints of the build out within the confines of that land use only. So to turn that project down, because it was vested, is tough. But what we can do is focus on the key negotiation elements that lead up to it. I did something that no other planning commission, I believe, has done, is I put a pause on a project, and I said it's insufficient, it's not addressing some of the key concerns, bring it back. And I convinced the rest of the planning commission to pause. It's the first time that's been done. And I think it's important to understand that a lot of the decision makers out there don't know that they can pause, continue an item, and have it come back. It changes the negotiation. And even when it came back the second time, the developer addressed everything. Okay? There was still some pieces that were missing. And we negotiated it right then and there. Okay? So it is a challenge that we're faced upon, but I think the other piece is it'll come back right to that setback requirement. We're building to the limits. Okay, so you talk about, hey, what do we do with that downtown? How do we not lose it? One is we don't allow it to convert. Okay, if they convert it, where are they going to go? Where they make the most money? If you're the landowner, you would do it. But as a decision maker, as an elected official, you don't have to allow that to happen. So I think that's where the changes have got to start, and that's how we can ensure that the community's voice, the community's desire, healthier living, place of congregation, more retail, amenities that meets its needs, having better options and better choices, those are the keys. I hope I've addressed all of your concerns. Any other questions?
What are your thoughts on attracting strategic employers here or having a business park within Dublin so that people here, whether they're entrepreneurs or job seekers, have opportunities here? Or do you think that the nature and the size of Dublin is not conducive for that kind of expansion?
So first of all, I'm all about that. That is a revenue stream for the city. We lost SAP. I look at it as a loss. Why would SAP move to Bishop Ranch? Rent, critical economic drivers. But as an employer, what are your fiduciary responsibilities? To have an interconnectivity with transportation infrastructure, providing alternative sources and modes to get to your place of employment. Dublin had it. What did we miss? We've got to get to the fundamentals of that. Regarding entrepreneurs, I'm part of different meetup groups. I'm watching the Tri-Valley Incubation Center. Innovation Tri-Valley is another one of them out in Livermore. They're doing something right there. They're providing funding, they're providing a footprint, they're providing a complex, they're providing an opportunity that allows low-cost investment for a startup to come into, that basically guarantees and creates a sustainable environment for these new businesses. Dublin has something going for it. We are the center of a corridor for any mechanism, mode that you want to go to. Whether you want to go to San Jose from San Joaquin Valley, you're coming through Dublin. If you're trying to go to San Francisco, you're coming through Dublin. You want to go to San Jose, you're coming through Dublin. What are we missing? I don't think there's been enough economic analysis, not enough studies done that get back to the sources of this issue. There was supposed to be a business complex that was a hybrid solution. It was supposed to be retail on the bottom business use on the top. And they failed to really address it and understand it. And the developer basically said there's no economic viability for it. It sounded to me that the real issue was it was not a great return on investment and that we were quick at our seats to make a decision. So I think it's really got to start back. We got to revisit. We got to know when to pause. We've got to understand what our economic needs and uses are and stick with our original vision on the elements that still make sense. That was part of the original Eastern Pacific Dublin plan. That was a project that was proposed by a developer who developed the entire Eastern Dublin. We had the Promenade project come forward. Quite honestly, it was the signature project that everybody moving into Eastern Dublin wanted. They wanted a Santana-type road. Okay? Are we changing our vision? The developer is going to come and say, hey, you know, it's not accessible. It doesn't make sense. We have too much retail. There's nobody that wants to come in. Let me build some houses. They come and say they want to build houses. Now they're changing, I want to build senior housing. Well, let me tell you what that plan is. It's going to get me in trouble, but that plan is it converts it into housing, which means then they can change it from that type of housing to another type of housing because it's within reason. It's not rocket science. Let's just open up the blinds and understand that fact. That developer placed that land exactly right there when they developed their own vision. So why should we change on our vision? Why do we gotta negotiate? I'm good with grass being over there. Let's make a requirement. If you're not gonna develop it, let's put a field of grass in. It's healthy. Hope I addressed your question.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Hi, I actually wanted to go back to the previous question. This is one of my pet peeve, and I wanted to bring to your attention, hope that there will be a positive representation of that, right? Question is, as a small business owner in Dublin, right, only Dublin, the setup cost, right, the sewer fees, city fees are fine, you know, each city has it. But the ton of money going into the sewer capacity.
Yep.
And you touch that topic, there isn't much left, so, right? So a person like me who will expand has no hope, right? Why? Because if I was to open another restaurant now, it would cost me $120,000 in sewer capacity, right? So where do we go with that? Now, San Jose, other cities don't have that kind of a plan. So I think something is fundamentally wrong, or we haven't looked correctly with needs better representation.
I'm with you on this. And that's why I said what I had to say relative to that funding stream. I think there are some incorrect choices being made. Maybe there's a reason out there, and maybe I'm too naive to understand it. But I'm telling you what, I've heard other business owners, not just yourself, say this exact same thing. And then you go follow the trail of where that money is going. All I gotta say is, if we want businesses to come, and if we have the infrastructure, why are we making it difficult? Let's revisit it. I think we need to have a mobilized effort of businesses that actually come back and start championing in a professional, seasoned approach, challenging some of these key decisions making as far as what's the real reason. Let me tell you some of the real reasons. There's a developer in town that's making it very expensive. They're increasing the rent, making it the highest in the Tri-Valley. Of course it's going to be vacant. That same developer also has ownership in a lot of the restaurants in that same floor plan. It's a very unique position to be in. And I'm not saying, again, that developer has full rights to do that. But we, as a city, have to understand why is it not working and why is that vacancy going upwards. And we have to also be at a position that says, just because of that, because your economic factors are making it hard for businesses to sustain themselves, it does not mean that we have to change your zoning. And we won't. What you need to do is come back with a downsized project if it's not feasible for you. You bought the land understanding its zoning. Last time I checked, you're not changing your single-family home into a high-rise, and they won't allow you to do it.
On a similar note, I know some of the retailers in the downtown area are very nervous because leases are not being renewed. It's not that their business is failing, it's that their leases are not being renewed. They're not allowed to operate past a certain date, and a lot of them are getting really nervous about when are they going to come in and shut me down. And some of these really nice places, they're not franchises, they're customized places where you can go buy a sewing machine, say, and be given sewing machine lessons and talk about the whole business of sewing. This is just one instance. There are a lot of them downtown. And I just want to bring this up because I don't know what can be done, but I do know that I've heard owners ask, what are the conditions here? What's going to happen to me?
And I've heard the similar, okay? It's real. We can't dictate to a landowner how they use their property. What we can do is dictate what they can do with their property in the future. You want to maintain it retail? Hey, go for it. We're good with it. You want to convert it? We don't have to roll on our back. And I think that's the piece that will change the conversation, is our ability not to want to negotiate and not to want to allow these simplified changes to just happen. We've got to stay firm on our grounds that actually says this area is going to be designated retail, period.
There's another issue that concerns me, and that's the height of the buildings. I'm starting to feel like we're living in this little hole where you can't see the hills anymore, you can't, view the landscape. It's all buildings in here. It's so tall. It's
So that's all part of the general plan requirements, especially in the downtown area. They have a downtown specific plan where they set the height requirements. And this is part of the things that I'm saying, hey, let's revisit it. And it makes people nervous to say, hey, let's revisit. It costs money. I don't disagree, it costs money. But if the citizens are having a problem, it's not making sense. Just because the master plan says you can go that high, it doesn't mean you allow it. I think, again, it's not rolling on your back. But
just sad that all you can see is buildings,
I
And
agree.
out beyond the buildings, there are lovely hills and things like that.
I'm with you on this, in the back.
I want to get back to some of the issues you're talking about relative to relooking at the strategic plan, as well as tapping into your expertise on transportation. As you know, the school district has experienced enormous growth and will continue to see that kind of growth. Recently, there was a bond measure passed, Measure H, which provided funding to possibly resolve those issues. But as we've seen recently, the school board is basically slowly shaving the trunk of that tree. Eventually it will fall. And the one issue is whether we will ever see a second high school or high school campus on the other side of town. And being a city council member and looking at the strategic plan, I sort of like to hear your point of view from the notion of can we even sustainably support 3,000 to 5,000 students traversing at commuter hours to the other side of town, and maybe the city can actually enact policies through the strategic plan that prohibit the school district from pursuing many more students going over to the other side, and maybe even pursue planning that would enable us to actually look at a site here. As a council member, what do you see that you would be able to enact to help us realize the idea of having a second high school campus here?
So first of all, I'm all for a second high school. I was also opposed to Measure H. And let me kind of explain why my opposition to Measure H first, because I think that's the story that's missing. Those who followed my blogs understood it. Measure H lacked accountability for the very reasons that you are now exposing. And I called that out. I said, in other bond measures that pass around, there's at least a tiering system, tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, where you designate projects that make sense. They didn't want to do it. They wanted to go with a simplified approach, and they pushed a major bond, basically in a 4-day approval process, okay? And we're going to live the end result of that. Do we need the schools? Yes. Did we need the money? Yes. All for that. I was just talking about the language. So the guarantee was what you were looking for, and the guarantee was what I was looking for. Could we make policies regarding traffic generating sources? That's your question. The part of the fundamentals there are tied to education is a fundamental responsibility of a school district. And a city has a fundamental responsibility to ensure that the infrastructure for the schools, the generator source, has its ability. So I think until the school district finds the right solution, I think at a city level, we need to be finding out what can we do to mitigate the traffic impacts. There's a funding source out there, which I helped pass, that has money tied to transportation methodologies, alternative sources. We could provide supported transit systems that will mitigate getting to and from. That only addresses the timing that it takes. That doesn't address the head count issues, but that's a fundamental responsibility, unfortunately, of the school district. They need to figure that one out. But I think what we can do at the city is continue to ensure that the land that's designated for the schools is very hard to develop into anything else. Don't allow the rezoning. I was opposed to the Jordan Ranch conversion. I was opposed to many of the other ones, including the one in Camp Parks. You know, it came underneath the glossy source of, hey, we're not increasing the housing, we're actually reducing the density, and we're partnering in with the school district. Well, let me tell you what partnering really looks like. Is if the infrastructure is not there to support it, we have to hit the pause button. Simple.
Yeah. Arun, one of my concerns is also that the city supported small businesses. And well, I have a different perspective than the gentleman that spoke earlier, but my opinion, okay, is the city is not small business friendly, right? And I say that from the standpoint of my wife and I have a business that we've been working out our own business, okay, homevendorsonline.com. And we have a second co-op where our small businesses join us, and the home businesses join us, and we support them in many different ways and services. And one of the examples I want to bring out is, for example, when we have the St. Patrick's Day Festival, okay, the fees that are charged, okay, to, well, I think nonprofits get a break, all right? Don't have an issue with that, but the home vendors are looked at and put in the category of a larger small business, okay, with much more income, revenue, and so forth. They're paying something like, you know, between $400 and $500 just for a permit, okay? So to me, that should be, you know, a much lower fee, okay? Something that makes sense, something that's reasonable, okay, for these home businesses. And then The other thing I want to quickly state is that walking here today, my wife and I live on the other side of Tuscaloosa. And so we took Central Parkway. And coming up Central Parkway from Tuscaloosa, there's no safe place to walk. Okay? There's no pedestrian safety area to walk. And we also have the same problem on Dublin Boulevard if you want to walk all the way down to where Target is. So we really need to have some public safety issues brought up.
So I'm going to address your last one first. What you're talking about is called gap closures for safe transportation infrastructure that includes pedestrian-friendly and bike-friendly elements. There is funding out there. The city has pursued some of it, but not all of it. And in the second tier element is certain developments are not moving forward, which means the only way to really go about building that safe infrastructure is to basically acquire that land. So, because it's not designated right away for public use, it's private land. So that's a fundamental barrier that we have. What can we do there? I think what we need to do is have the conversations with the landowners relative to timing, relative to the setback, and then sit down and reevaluate it. I know when we were developing 13 years ago when I came into the city, when you come down Gleason and you go onto Tassajara, it used to be a hard bump. Took out the bottom of my car, took out the bottom of several others, and I had a conversation with the city manager at the time. And I said, you know what? You need to do something here. We don't have funding, it's a temporary pavement. I go, how long is temporary? It's been 3 years. I go, and they go, we don't have money. I go, no, you do. I work for where you have the money. You are getting this designated funding stream. Use it, and use it correctly for the right reasons. So I think part of the things at the city level needs to happen by the elected officials is we need to challenge the decision-making processes. It's fundamentally missing. And I don't know what the reason is, but I can tell you I'm going to be part of the ones that's going to keep on adding items to the agenda that says, hey, we need to look at this, the community is thinking this, businesses are thinking this, and this is impacting it from a safety measure. So it's doing our fiduciary responsibility instead of bringing about other policies and procedures to really just address municipal code changes. I was subject of that. I thought it was a waste of time. I thought it was a big mess. And that's systematic on some of the other choices that are being made, is we're not focused on the real functions that we're a part of. We're not focused on the functionalities that we need to approach. Regarding businesses and the permitting fees, I think that's a conversation I'd like to have with you to understand it more. My understanding is the permitting fees here in Dublin, at least for a business permit, are the lowest. But I think what you're talking about is the functional event permits. And that's something that we should talk about, whether there needs to be a different way to look at it to potentially provide some sort of augmentation if that funding cost is real. You know, what is the makeup of that fee? Should we raise it based on the footprint? Should we raise it based on the size of that company coming in? What are the positive and negative impacts on those events being held versus the positive economics relative to a revenue stream to the city itself and to the businesses and the viability of its citizens?
Arun, there's a notion in our city that we have this history of pay-to-play for the politicians flocking to our city to donate to campaign contributions, believing because in the past 20 years, some of our former mayors who ran for state assembly, even up to Congress, have accepted donations, campaign contributions, in exchange, as some believe, for votes with rezoning, converting. What's your take on that, and will you or will you not accept campaign contributions from developers?
I'm gonna answer the last one first. I will not. Not, N-O-T, not.
I just wanted to.
So, let me tell you a little bit about why my campaign is different. First of all, you're noticing there is no online mechanism to donate. You're also noticing the only way to donate is by attending an event or to come and meet with me in person. I am screening every single dollar coming into my campaign. I do not need that special interest money. I don't. I believe that in November, I'm going to win for the right reasons. And if I don't, I think we all need to look in the mirror. Because then we own it. We own the choice. And the only way to alter that choice is by showing it in your votes. I don't care if you vote for me or against me, make the right choice. Stick with your fundamentals, be professional about that choice. Be educated about that choice. I forgot your other question because I got so motivated.
Your opinion on the pay-to-play.
Pay-to-play is illegal, just so you know. It's illegal.
But Dublin has a history of, there have been articles, front page of the paper. It has a history. We have a convicted felon who's donated tens of thousands of dollars to some of our current mayor and council members. So what's your opinion? Do you think that money should be donated back to our community? Some of this past campaign contribution from a convicted felon, or is that an outside discussion? Maybe you don't want that.
I would say that's a great idea, but I bet you they won't do it.
They haven't so far.
Okay? I know you're supposed to return it if it's not from a viable source. Okay? And I think it has to do a lot about professionalism and integrity. I don't know what their decision-making processes were, but I'm not hungry for the money. I'd rather lose the campaign going down with integrity. So I think that's a conversation to be had with the other elected officials. They may or may not have known things at that time, and that's fair, okay? And I think we need to be respectful to that. I can talk about my campaign. I can talk about what I'm willing to do and where exactly I'm willing to lose this campaign for. Any other questions? If not, I may have talked too much. In the back.
I heard a couple of rumors about sales tax increase and term limits being considered, like removal of term limits being considered at the council. Do you have any information about that?
It did.
Increase and removal of term limits.
So, sales tax increase. Let me come back to that one. Let me address the second one first.
Okay.
Seems like that's my notion here. It came to the city council about 2 weeks ago, I think, about the term limits wanting to be reevaluated.
Okay.
And I watched the debate, and it was actually brought forward by our mayor,
Okay.
and the mayor was not present for this item. The vice mayor navigated through it in a discussion that basically said now is not the right time. There was a council member that was interested in the option saying 8 years is too short.
Okay.
Last time I looked, 8 years is generally about 1/3 of somebody's career, 1/5 at the max. I think that's too long, and I think they need to move on. I don't think they should own a kingdom, and I can tell you one thing is, after 8 years, your decision-making capabilities gets put in a box and you don't know how to see outside.
Is that council member running in November?
No.
Okay.
I would urge you to watch it. It's on the city site, but that council member is not running. The mayor brought it forward.
And the sales tax.
Oh, sales tax.
It's zero now.
It's not 0. I may have had something to do with it getting to 9.5, okay? But it was for the right reasons. I pushed that 0.5 cent sales tax for transportation. Sales tax in the city, I think for one, there may be no choices based on flawed decision-making processes in the past. Would I push it? I can tell you I'm going to ask about 40 questions before we get there. My understanding is it may be on the November ballot. And I believe it takes a 51% to approve at a city level. And a regional level of sales tax would take around 66.7%. And I know that number very intrinsically because I helped a ballot measure lose by 0.1%. So I know the pain and suffering of trying to push a ballot measure forward. And I think the key thing is if a sales tax comes forward, I want to see that money earmarked for very specific use. Because I think where some of the flaws in the decision-making processes are when they push sales tax are, it says, hey, in general, these kinds of funds can be used generally for this, and it gets redirected. I worked for a sales tax organization that allowed 1% of it to go towards administration cost. I'd like to see that cap put on place. I'd like to also understand where are the financial deficiencies and what are the sources of revenues that are funding those. If that sales tax was dedicated to safety, to law enforcement, if it was designated towards closing some of these gaps, I'm all for it. If not, I think we need to revisit some of the policies and procedures, some of the financial obligations, long-term and short. We need to make sure that we're operating efficiently at our city infrastructure. So all of these need to be evaluated, and I think there needs to be a removal of sense of entitlement that we're going to pass everything because, oh, these people are rich and they can afford it. I think that mentality has to go away because we have a downturn in the economy. That mentality is going to be very different. And its ability to fund it is going to be very different, and there's going to be a requirement to downsize.
So, one more thing. So, you have a unique campaign. Anytime I take on an endeavor, I always do like a SWOT analysis, right? Strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats. Your strength is you have a unique campaign. It's by far one of the most interesting things that I've seen. Weakness is, of course, if you're not going to take external contributions, you're going to have a limited amount of a cash pot, right? Your opportunities is huge. You have an opportunity to become a city council. There's 2 seats open, 4 people probably, presumably to be running right now.
4 currently.
Right. And the threats are, of course, your competition. So if you look at what you're performing right now, how do you get your message out there? I know you're saying grassroots, but maybe you already have a grand plan already in place that you want to put in action soon. But how are you going to get this message out there? We're here to back you, but I'm trying to think of what's your bigger vision to get your message across through November.
So one of the things I had said earlier on was there was a lot of parts of the puzzle that I'm not ready to expose. But I want to make sure I'm forthcoming and address your question. Grassroots will be the way. It won't be through mailed vouchers. And it won't be through a whole lot of signage. There will be a precinct walk, for sure. And I'm going to be relying more than finances on other meets and greets of this nature. Because these are positive contact points that I can make. Positive contact points are the ones that convert into the highest voting ratios. So my campaign is based on a simple business fundamental. I'm going to only invest dollars where the dollars make sense. If I can get a higher return on vote count, I'm going for it. So yard signs, yes. The flyers, they're not going to be glossy. they're going to be simple. There's going to be enough out there. This is a presidential election. The voter turnout is going to be high. You're going to have about 31 to 35% voter turnout at a presidential election. We have 28,000, I believe, registered voters in the city of Dublin. 6,000, I believe, exist in the east. That means 18,000 plus control in the west. My highest level of weakness is in the west. I think you can tell I've strategized, but I am weak. I think I'm strong by support, not circulated. I think I need people to share the information if they support me. I think they need to talk to their friends about even having a sit down, 5, 10 people at a time. I don't care. To me, that's positive contact. So the campaign is going to be different, but I can tell you, having run a big campaign before, where our highest voter turnout is. Now, I mentioned 24,000 voters in Dublin. Let me tell you what the stats were in 2014. 25% turned out to vote for local politics. 6,000. Sounds like we got a problem, don't we? The other problem we have is the city of Dublin is predominantly non-US citizen. We need to tell people to make sure if they really believe in the United States, if they believe in their infrastructure and want their voice to be heard, to consider making the right choice, converting over, and becoming a registered voter. We need to educate people relative to if they've recently moved into Dublin, that they need to re-register and they need to reflect Dublin as the point of residence. So there's a lot of other education pieces that I want to get out there, and quite honestly, it may not all be focused on my campaign alone. It's going to be a unique campaign. Going to go out for the fight. A lot of people came out for me in January, and I'm committed to all of those people that came out in January. Okay. Any other questions? If not, I do want to make sure people who I support that mean a lot about change get recognized. So first of all, before I get to my final thanks, I do want to recognize a candidate that's running for judge this coming November, Scott Jackson. But what I can tell you is his fundamentals, his professionalism, his integrity, his family, all of it is the right reason that he should be elected in November. So I encourage you guys to get out there, understand your candidates, meet Scott. You don't hear me tossing around the support a lot, but Scott, I'm behind you 100%. In November, we're going to have a similar victory. The other thanks I want to do is to Paran, okay, thank you too. I'm looking over there and you guys are wearing the same color, stop doing that. But Paran, he's been actually behind me 100%. A lot of you guys know that I was part of one of the biggest HOAs in Dublin that shaked and rumbled, made a difference, thought outside the box. And when he heard I was starting to slow down on the HOA board, he came behind me and he goes, well, you have a little bit of vacancy. I think you need to start thinking about running for office. And he also supported my kickoff. So, Paran, thank you for being there. Thank you for lighting a fire and helping me fight my wife to run on this campaign. And then, of course, the host of today's event, Raymond and Diane. You guys have a special place in my heart. So you guys can tell I get sentimental really easy, so I'm gonna start to mute myself. But one thing, What happened?
I know.
Yeah, that happens. I do that too.
Everybody in it, who was she?
This is my grandmother over here, and I think my wife went missing somehow. She couldn't take it anymore. Just a joke. I think she's outside with the kids. But this campaign's going to be unique. I'm going to need everybody's support, positive comments, positive thoughts. Once I figure out where we're headed in November, wait for the announcement of where, irrelevant of the turnout, we are winners. I'm going to tell you why we're winners. We are making a change. We are influencing change. And regardless of the end result, in my heart, I've educated the community to understand why running for office is tough, it's hard. The community needs to get out and support in order for the vision to be fulfilled. So irrelevant of whether I'm elected or not, I'm committed to this community and making a difference. Thank you for your support.